Hey, Lucas, I am so excited that you are a part of the Spark PodCon PodFest Global Media Summit. Welcome.
Thank you, Misty. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. Talk to us about how long you've been podcasting.
So I started dabbling with podcasting actually first through our church. I own a media company as well as I'm a pastor at a church called Influence Church. We started that, it feels like maybe 10 years ago, 10 years ago, something. I have a show, the Lucas Miles Show. I think we're on year 3 or 4 for that. We've done over 100 episodes. So it's been a few years now, and tried a lot of different platforms and systems. And so obviously always love helping people be able to get into this wonderful business of podcasting.
Yeah, and you've had some amazing guests on your podcast. And so that's what I want to talk to you about is number one, what makes a great interview? And then two, how do you find great guests? So I think that is an important part of our show. So spill the secret sauce.
Yeah, so I have probably some very specific thoughts on this. I mean, I actually just finished an interview like 2 minutes before we jumped on here, and I would say he's a great guest. And I won't say his name because it doesn't matter, but he's not somebody that everybody would know who he is, but his material has impacted my life so much that, we just went, a lot of my shows are 20, 30 minutes. We did an hour and 15 minutes because it was just, there was so much there, and I was so passionate about what he was, kind of what he brings to the table. I think that the key to a good interview is really doing your homework and knowing about your guest. I'm an author as well. I have a book. My first book was called Good God. And I think I did 60 media outlets in 45 days when that book dropped. And I can tell you the ones that made for good interviews and the ones that made for bad interviews were the ones where I could tell the host had actually at least read some of the material. And the ones where I went on there and they were kind of like, oh, tell us about your book. And because they didn't know anything about it, I understand it's a fast-paced business, especially, podcasting and radio. But the more we can do our homework on our guests before they get there, I think, one, it shows respect to them for them coming on the program. And two, you're actually able to talk conversationally and from a firsthand experience about what they're bringing to the table. And I think it just brings a richness in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. And so some of the people that you've had on your show, you've had Kathy Lee Gifford and some other people with some notoriety. So how did you make those connections? And how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, every connection's a little bit different. I mean, we've had names like, you mentioned Kathy Lee Gifford, Mario Lopez. I just did a long form interview with Candace Cameron Bure live in person at Biola that we're going to be releasing here. That was kind of a tour version of the Lucas Miles Show. And that's about an hour and a half, I think, interview. Jim Caviezel, Devon Franklin, a lot of other faith actors, Atticus Schaefer, different, names. And all of those kind of come in a different way. The best way I tell somebody to start off is doing what I call the guest snowball. And, if you want to build a snowman, and I come from, northern Indiana, we're right along Lake Michigan. So we know all about snow here. We get that thing called lake effect snow. And, on a good snow day, if you want to build a snowman, you don't just go out and grab this big pile of snow and make it, and make that the base. You have to start with a snowball. You get that nice and packed, and then you start rolling that. And so, we don't want to ever communicate to people that, hey, you're just the start of my snowball. I'm just using you to get a bigger guest. Obviously, that's not the heart with which we're approaching this, especially as believers. But, we're looking at, if I've never done a podcast episode or I'm just getting started, the chances are that, I'm probably not going to just approach, Jim Caviezel or Mel Gibson, as my first guest. And if you can get them, great, more power to you. But more often than not, the question that agents and managers and publicists are going to ask you is, who else has been on your show before?
Yeah.
And so if you want to gain respect in those areas, you start with, who do I actually have access to right now? It might be another show host. It might be an author. It might be some sort of celebrity that you can connect with. It might be a pastor. And then you kind of take those names. You do a great job with those. And then, when you're writing that next publicist or you're writing that next manager or agent, you're able to say, past guests include, this name, and this name. And then that gives some credibility. So they go, okay, I mean, if I'm approaching, I've gotten to know Candace's team now. And so, hopefully she won't mind me using her example. Her team's able to go, okay, he's had Kathy Lee Gifford and Mario Lopez. So, chances are he's not a total axe murderer or psychopath. So let's give it a try, and so they take a chance on you. And that's what you really need. You need somebody to take a chance on you, but you start with the people that you actually have access with. You do a great job with those guests before you roll that into, some maybe bigger names, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's like concentric circles. So start with what
Yes.
you know, and then go out from there. And a lot of times I will always finish an interview with, "This has been amazing. I've loved interviewing you, but who else do you think would be a great fit
Yeah.
for my
Yeah.
show?" And then great guests are going to know other great guests, and that's going to be a great way to build your network as well.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. And I think recognizing the power of building relationships with publicists and publishers. We get a lot of guests from those locations. I mean, we're at the phase with the Lucas Miles show where I rarely, if I'm going after a guest, it's because like I really want to talk to them and not because we need to fill a slot. We are getting pitched every day from publishers and publicists that they have new books coming out or new things that are happening there. And so we're able to kind of sort through and make sure it's right for the show. And those become some really great friends for you when you're booking guests. And they almost become an extension of your team because you can go to them and say, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody in this space. Do you have anybody?" And if you treat them nice and maybe send them a Christmas card, they might remember you a little bit better.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, I have really enjoyed having you here. Thanks so much for sharing your insight and your wisdom with us. And I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and best of luck to everybody at the event.